So this is another question I'll get asked a lot, which is where should I be spending my stamina? What's the best way to actually develop my character to raise my overall team rating, etc. And that's what I'll try to answer in today's video. Now, before actually talking about the 5 different modes where you can just spend stamina to farm resources, etc., the first thing I would like to point out is that all of the stages, regardless of the difficulty, regardless of the resource, it's always going to cost you 15 stamina. However, obviously the harder stages are going to give you more resources than the earlier stages, etc. So you should always be trying to beat the highest stage available to you before committing to do any bulk farming. Because let's say if you're actually capable of beating, let's say, stage 11, however, you are only farming on stage 10, then you are actually be losing out around roughly maybe like 10% of the resource available to you. And if you are spending, 300 stamina per day on that, that's actually going to be quite substantial difference that will be making. So always make sure you are beating whatever the highest difficulty available to you. And the game literally tell you what's the highest stage you are capable of beating, which is that it will actually say a sign saying weakness. So if you actually go to a stage where it shows weakness, so right next to your team rating, it actually shows this red sign, red text saying weakness, basically don't bother trying that. Like you would be spending absolute hours or days on this stage, and the game will just stage that loss for you. And no matter what you do, you will be, you'll be losing that. So it's just impossible to beat it. The game literally soft lock you at that. However, if it doesn't say weakness, then that basically means like with enough optimization in terms of your skill rotations into your moves, or maybe just share if you actually want to play on auto. If you just keep on resetting for like an hour, you will be able to find a way to beat it, okay? Because the game didn't soft lock you. With that perfect RNG run, you can definitely beat it. And I'll quickly show you here. So for example here, you can see my team rating is 76k. The enemy rating is 89k. It shows this weakness sign because I'm more than 15% threshold away. That's roughly when you will then start seeing this weakness sign, okay? About 15% difference in power rating. So when you see this, there's no point of me trying to bother. And this is when the enemies are 89k rating. However, this stage, which I meant to be earlier today, is only at 87k rating. It doesn't show that weakness signs, therefore I know I can beat him. It still took me a while to actually get that run, right? It took me probably at least half an hour, but I know I am able to do it, and therefore I'm spending that time to actually beat that stage, because I then know now when I farm the stage, I will be able to get 8 training manual, rather than if I was stuck at the earlier one, I will only be getting 7. That's a whopping 14% increase in terms of my resource that I'm able to farm, okay? So definitely spend those time to beat the stages as long as you don't see that weakness sign to actually soft lock you, okay? So that's the first thing you need to do. Okay, now let's talk about the actual 5 different stages that you're able to farm. So, basically the 5 different stages. The first one's for EXP for your characters, the second one's for memories, the third one's for unlocking your training skills for your characters, and then the last 2 are potentials, and they have a slightly different drop of the different sets that you're able to farm, okay? And also they kind of open on different days of the week. Now the potential is going to be the lowest priority, mainly because if you're too low on the stages, you can only farm the purple ones. Yes, you can then eventually farm the gold one from stage 7-ish, and it doesn't say the probability, but I'm pretty sure the harder stages are going to give you higher drop rates, okay? So definitely don't bother farming this too early on. The other thing is also a lot of the time when you farm, you don't actually know which potential set you'll be getting. And even if you get the actual set you want, it's no guarantee you'll be getting the substats you want, right? That's kind of the end game farming, right? You'll be spending a lot of stamina trying to get that perfect combination of both the potential set and also the substat. This is going to take a lot of your stamina, and you may be spending absolute loads without seeing any returns. So that's kind of why you should probably leave this at the very, very end, only when you're actually capable of farming at the highest stage possible, okay? So definitely leave the potential at the very end. And then the other one I'll probably also not prioritize much is going to be the memory. And the reason for this, a lot of time, the future UR memories are going to be better than whatever SSR memory you may be running right now. And in fact, a lot of time you are probably saving your memories tickets for those UR memories in the future. And now, right now, you're only rocking with the SR memories, etc. So why would you actually spend loads of time into farming this just to increase your SR memories, right? Granted, whatever resource you spend here, eventually you can then use that as food for future UR memory, but still, it's not going to be the highest boost in terms of your team rating. Like, why would you farm in resources to level up an SR rarity memory when you can use the same stamina to actually level up your SSR or UR characters, right? It's just not going to be the best use of your stamina. Now, granted, there are going to be some like daily missions which might actually require you to, for example, perform upgrade memory or upgrade potential. So if that's the case, you should probably still do that just to collect this in order to, increase the level of your afternoon nap if that's necessary. So you can probably still farm like once or twice just to do the daily missions, but just don't go too hard on it because it's just going to be power crap in the future. I'm just going to put it bluntly, okay? So that basically just leaves two stages remaining or two type of resources remaining, which is going to be the character EXP and also going to be the training manual. Now, out of the two, the one thing you need to realize is that the return for the training manual is a lot higher when you're actually able to be the later stages. So I'm going to give a quick example. So if I compare stage 4 and stage 5, okay, so I know this is quite early on, but just use this as an easy mathematical example. Stage 4, I only get 2 of those training books. I get lots of water bottles, but water bottle is not the main bottleneck, to be honest. Training manual is kind of the main one that's going to prevent you from actually fully unlock a character skill. And then if you actually go to stage 5, you are able to go from 2 training manual per stage to 3. So that's a 50% increase in the resource you're able to get. If we take a look at the equivalent one for EXP, you are going from 3.8k to 4.2k. That's only an increase of 400. That's only a 10% increase. So you can already see here the return of the harder difficulty on the training manual is a lot higher than whatever the return is for your EXP. So that's kind of why early on you should definitely be focusing more on the EXP until you are actually capable of farming the later stages. Now there's no a clear rule of thumb as to at which point you should pivot, but generally speaking I'll probably advise roughly around able to get all of your characters from 4-star to 5-star. That's normally a good break point because once you actually raise 5-star, you're going to increase your team rating by quite a bit, and then you're actually then capable of farming some of the harder stages for the training manual, and then therefore get a much better return on the resources. So that's kind of why I normally recommend you you level up all of your character to at least 5-star first before moving on to this. Now there are going to be a few exceptions which you can make, which I'm going to point out, but once again, it's not like a hard rule of thumb. So if you start pivoting towards training manual slightly earlier, it doesn't really matter too much, okay? It's just a general rough rule of thumb. So what are going to be those few exception cases? Number one, you can have 7 characters on your field. However, the setter, you will normally be swapping them around depending on the enemy or the opponent's speciality. So as a result, all of the other character, when you actually put some resources to develop them, you see the return immediately. For the setters, you may not necessarily see the return unless it's actually the stage where your setter have that advantage, right? So that's kind of why I will probably level up the other 6 members of your team to 5-star first. However, I will leave the 2 setters at 4-star, and at that point, I already think it's okay for you to then pivot towards the training manual. So that's one thing. And then the other thing, when deciding when you actually want to do a training manual, or more important, I guess, which character do you actually want to unlock your training skill first? What you need to understand is, first of all, to actually unlock that training skill, it takes a lot of resources, right? Each one of those is going to take, let me take a character which I haven't actually fully unlocked. Like each one of those take a lot of resources. So when you actually want to unlock a skill completely, it's going to use up loads of different stamina in order to farm of that. So it's actually going to be quite important to know which one you actually want to prioritize first. And the ones you normally want to prioritize first is going to be either, first of all, if you just take a look at the skill, it looks very important, and therefore you want to unlock it first, right? And then the second thing you also want to bear in mind is going to be the skill resonance and whether you have any actual dupes on that character as well. Because normally when you first get a character, the total skill level is going to be 3, right? Because you have unlocked 3 skills, you have 1 skill which is unlocked, so that's going to weigh out up to 3. As soon as you unlock this one with the training manual, this jump to 4, and you're then able to increase your basic stats by 10%. And that's already going to see a massive increase in terms of your power rating. So this is normally a sweet spot. However, let's imagine if you're already able to get dupes of this character because you meant to pull multiple copies. Let's say if you already have one dupe on this character, what that basically means is that as soon as you have that dupe, you can actually level up the skill by going through here, and then the character is already going to be able to unlock their 10% extra basic stat without even needing to unlock the training skill. And if that's the case, then the value of actually unlocking training skill for that character is not going to be as large. Because if you actually unlock it for a different character, not only you unlock a new skill, you also unlock some extra stats, right? So it's going to be a very simple way to prioritize which one you actually want to do first. However, on the other hand, so what I was just talking about if you only have one copy or one dupe for that character, but on the other hand, if you actually have two dupes for that character, then that's a totally different matter. Because if you have two dupes and you're also able to unlock this training skill, you can then actually unlock an additional effect because your total skill level would then be 6, and then you can actually then unlock the skill resonance level 2, and then unlock new passive ability with new skills for that character. And a lot of times those are actually going to be a big boost to your character, and that's kind of why if it's only going to be one dupe, I will actually deprioritize that character because you can already get that extra stat. However, if you have two dupes on that character, then I will actually then move that character back up onto the priority list at the top, because then I can actually unlock a new ability both from the training skill but also from skill resonance at the same time.